If you follow the president on DACA earlier this week, you're better than me.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you at part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
I think that most of you have an empathy, if not a sympathy, for the deferred action childhood arrival students and young people working in our economy for the last many years since President Obama issued the order. In fact, the polling data is really, really high, which is why I don't understand why the polling data doesn't impact the way the administration and Congress work this thing out, but we'll talk about it tonight. It's great to have you in. Thank you very much for joining me on my State of Mind. In the meantime, first, let's talk about a couple of things that have been happening here in the state, including this debacle. I mean, only in Rhode Island can you screw this up, right? Lawmakers drilled on harassment. Now, the headline, quote, drilled on, drilled is like instructed, as opposed to, you know, drilled, because they're all harassing each other. Although it seems as if they ought to be drilled because they can't even figure out how to get into a seminar and out of a seminar without having some kind of a controversy. Now, this was all the alleged objective of State Representative Teresa Tanzi, who was one of the first Rhode Islanders to come out with the hashtag #MeToo. And I've been harassed before by a heavy in the legislature in exchange for moving bills, but I'll never tell you who it is. You know, that's her.
It's something that in my 8 years we've not done a single time in the General Assembly. It takes sometimes difficult conversations to make good things happen, and you know, something positive is going to come out of it. That was my goal in stepping forward to begin with.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Now she's going to be the chairperson of a statewide sexual harassment commission. Look, you know, if there's going to be new legislation in the state that's going to impact the way businesses run and even statewide organizations run, that's going to be something you're going to be very careful with. All right? Just because we got a cultural problem doesn't mean we need a new law every time we have a cultural problem. Now, we have a cultural problem. There's no doubt about that. I would imagine that most men out here are also cognizant and accepting that some things have got to change. And I'm guessing most men watching this show are not participating in the kind of harassment that unfortunately is way too prevalent in the hierarchy of American management and ownership culture, whatever, stemming from Weinstein and the latest. The idea that we needed legislators to come to a seminar voluntarily, what were they going to do, not come? Okay, I didn't go to the sexual harassment seminar. They go to the seminar, and then they have this little situation where the state rep from Providence, Ramon Perez, with a heavy accent, I guess, asked some questions that he says were sincere about, you know, how you actually ask for a sexual favor, to which the response from State Representative Moira Dunn in Providence was to be offended, feeling like she was harassed in the seminar. Now, he feels like he's been harassed by her harassment notation. She's on Facebook, which is the poison of American culture anyway, complaining about what he said. Really? Why don't we leave the part-time legislators who have other jobs and other lives to get their sexual harassment training somewhere else and just have them do something like focus on a couple of things like the budget, a couple of projects like the Paw Sox Stadium, which will be our conversation tomorrow night. It's just children. Children. We need adults in state government. We found an adult yesterday. Very interesting dynamic on the radio show, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. Did you see this post on Facebook? Again, it affects the brains not only of everyday people, but even local police departments, where the Warwick Police Department identified this woman through a tape that was sent to them by a local department store. This is the security video. I guess the woman next to her drops a $100 bill. This elderly woman picks it up and then goes shh, 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 you know, to the kid that is you know, shh, as she picks up the $100 bill. It is apparent an alleged theft, no doubt, right? But in seeking her out, and why we need Facebook to seek out a $100 theft is beyond me. But anyway, the Warwick Police post the idea that she is the, quote, grandmother of the year for 2017, tongue-in-cheek sarcasm. Well, I wondered out loud when I saw it the first time, gee, did you ever think that maybe she's got dementia? Did you ever think that maybe she's got some issues that perhaps you should investigate before you start labeling her and affecting her character? In fact, if I'm a judge and the Warwick Police walk into my court and say, the witness, by the way, Your Honor, is the grandmother of the year in 2017, I say, you know, shut your mouth, hold your opinion, or I'll hold you in contempt of court. She deserves a fair trial. right? Instead, Facebook, whoa, let's make a joke out of this whole thing. Well, I've been furious about this since the get-go. Yesterday, this headline indicates a little bit of progress and common sense. They put out a release from the Warwick Police Department yesterday that they had nailed the suspect, okay, and she'll be in court later. But I took the Warwick Police Chief, who I've always found to be one of the consummate public servants in this state, to task for this, really kind of browbeat him over the behavior of his police department. And not surprisingly to me, here's what he said.
Comments about her character, obviously that was wrong. And I take full responsibility, and I apologize to you. I apologize to all the listeners. I apologize to the woman.
That's called leadership. It turns out that the person who posted for the Facebook for the Warwick Police Department was not the detective who was listed there. So there was somebody who was involved in the production of social media. You know, all of us have got to take a deep breath when it comes to the use of social media, all the way up through law enforcement. The platform changes behavior. We have to think our way through this thing. You know, what you do, you know, my kid is the most incredible kid, as you send all the photos to your brothers and sisters. Believe me, I got them. Nauseates me. Every time my nephew does something, I say, whoa, it's the biggest thing in the world. It's unbelievable, the disease we have with Facebook. But when it comes to the utility of it, fantastic. When it comes to the editorial position that a law enforcement agency is going to take, can they check themselves, please? All right, we're going to talk to the Rhode Island Association of Police Chiefs about this in the near future, because this is a disease, not just in the Warwick Police Department. All right, let's talk about the president and DACA and what he was trying to say. Here's a headline from the other day, and of course, depending on the 5-minute interval in that famous bipartisan meeting at the State House, he was DACA alone, DACA with security, DACA this, DACA that, and whatever you bring me is good.
My positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with. I am very much reliant on the people in this room. I know most of the people on both sides. I have a lot of respect for the people on both sides. And what I approve is going to be very much reliant on what the people in this room come to me with. I have great confidence in the people. If they come to me with things that I'm not in love with, I'm going to do it because I respect them.
Did you follow that?
I have no idea what he said. And also, after the meeting, he tweets something completely different. I mean, we know that he doesn't have a very good moral compass when it comes to issues of vulnerable populations like the Latinos. So, I mean, it's who's he following?
Gabriela Domenzain is new from Maryland. You're part of that semi-political pipeline that
I'm from
seems
Mexico.
To,
I grew up in Florida.
Originally, okay.
But yes, Maryland.
Last stop, Maryland. But
Yeah.
you worked for the then governor.
I did.
And you're here as less than 6 months, right? Working at the Latino Institute at Roger Williams.
I am.
Tell us about the work that you do down there and what the institute does.
You know, it's interesting, right? Because Rhode Island has a very, very large Latino population, right? So anywhere between 15 to 20%, which is above the national average. The problem is that because they're concentrated in urban centers, a lot of the folks who actually legislate and a lot of the people who actually talk about the community don't really know it. So the mission of the Latino Policy Institute is to convince, is to put out reports, nonpartisan reports, so that folks, journalists, legislators, et cetera, actually have facts on which to base their opinions and their policies.
Nonpartisan reports.
Yep.
Explain that, the context. I mean, you're saying data doesn't lie.
Yeah.
But your interpretations, your suggestions, your initiatives, all of that has a partisan flavor. I mean, you have a point of view.
No, I mean, we have a point of view in the sense that
We
we're
already
presenting...
issued a point of view on the president today, one in which I agree with.
Right,
But
right.
there's a point of view.
Yeah.
It's not the notion of objectivity is a goal, not necessarily a reality.
Yeah. I think the difference is, you know, the point of view or the slant is what benefits the Latino community and what's good for the Latino community. In the case of the president, we have a president who, from day one, vilified the Latino community by calling all Mexicans murderers and rapists and some good people, and has continued via his policy, via his tweets, to show that he disrespects his community. So that's, I think, an objective opinion about how the president affects him.
Here's the rub, and I think the nuanced challenge here is to actually determine how much of what is good for the Latino community is good for America.
Most. Latinos want jobs, they want health care, they care about safety, they care about education. So for example, if we have right now Rhode Island, if you put a Latino student in Rhode Island, they have the worst chance of succeeding in the nation. When you're talking about school districts like Providence or like Central Falls that are 64, 85% Latino, if you help Latino kids, all of the children in that school will be helped. So it's not an us versus them. It's a we are all us. One part of us is failing, and if we don't help them, the whole will be affected as well.
Right. Agree. It's not the sell. It's not an easy sell. There's an American disposition, and the definition and the realities of illegal or undocumented status impact the way people come to this conversation, right?
You know, yeah, and what I found interesting, I mean, I've been obviously traveling around Rhode Island a lot and speaking to many people. Rhode Islanders have a very, very vivid recollection and vivid sense of pride of their immigration history. So they know that their parents arrived from Italy or their grandparents. So I'm hoping, and with conversations like these, that the sell, as you call it, isn't going to be as hard here. What we lack is leadership at the national level, and we're figuring out I'm figuring out the state level right now. There's nobody really speaking to, as you said, the quote that I had in the Providence Journal, there's nobody really speaking to how what the president is doing is affecting the fabric and the values our country was built on.
All right, we'll dig down on that one, what that means here at home when we come back. Stay with us.
These are people who have been living by the rules, getting background checks every 18 months, getting their fingerprints for more than 20 years. Time to give Salvadoran and all TPS holders citizenship.
All right, now this is a sticky wicket. El Salvadorans have been protected since 2001. Now they got 18 months to get out of Dodge. I'm laughing because I don't see the pragmatism of this. You're shaking your head, obviously, for your own perspective. Another Trump administration lever against comprehensive immigration reform that'll help everybody, or a pot shot for no reason?
I think it's really cynical what the president is doing. He's basically picking off all of the most appealing cases of immigrants, whether it's DACA, whether it's TPS, so folks that literally their homes are either destroyed or their countries are war-torn, in order to push the issue of his wall. I mean, that's what we're looking at, right?
How many El Salvadorans out of that 200,000 number are here illegally, undocumented?
Nobody. So basically what temporary protective status says, the United States recognizes that there's a war in a country, there's destabilization in a country, and these are refugees. In this case, they're environmental refugees from the hurricane, right? So if you have temporary protective status, you are not undocumented. There's nothing about it, right? As soon as temporary protective status ends, which is what the president is saying is going to end, then you're out of status.
Remind me on the history of this, 2001. Were they here and got the status, or did they get the status and came here?
You have to be in the country when TPS is called. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
However, they pass background checks, they have to pay. So these are folks that we know. We know who they are, we know their addresses, and as the person in the video said, most have been here for over 20 years.
Do you assign motive to this move?
For the president?
Yeah.
To be honest, I really do think that he's trying to pressure, make it so impossible for folks to live in this country that maybe Congress will react, and because he has the power, they can do more his wall and more border protection than anything else.
When I ask about his motive, it's often, who knows who's making the calls.
I mean, we know Steve Miller and we know Steve Bannon. Yeah. I mean, right? So even though Bannon is out, he definitely had a very, very big part in creating the Trump's
What's the impact
policies
on the ground here in the region and the
So
state?
it's about 2,600 Salvadorans with TPS in the state. In Massachusetts, it's a much larger population of Salvadorans.
And most of them are just working for a living, just going about their business.
Working for a living, paying taxes, owning mortgages. I think it's over 150,000 citizen children of these folks. So, I mean, all of us here, you know, whether we live in the urban centers or not, are one degree of separation from somebody who has TPS or who's undocumented. It really just takes you asking your neighbor, you know, about this and seeing how they're doing to be personally impacted by this. If you think about it, there's 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, right? How many friends do you think each one of them has? Let's say they have 5. Let's say they have 6. 66 million people are affected by deportation of 11 million people. That's what? 1/5, 1/6 of our country? This is a much larger problem, but we don't talk about it except for in cases like this.
So we wrap that into with DACA on, so we've got these component minor controversies inside the immigration thing,
yep.
and they highlight specific problems, and I'm sure we could find 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 more
yep.
before we're done.
Yep.
But we have a March deadline on the DACA thing, and we had this crazy meeting, some of which I think was the most incredible presidential executive move in the history of the United States of America. I think I think the president thinks that. Others are trying to figure out the play-by-play and go down the script and figure out where in the heck this thing was going from one spot to the next. Now we have a judge that has issued kind of a stay without a deadline on you know, the elimination or on the order to send DACA students out.
And the acceptance, yeah.
By March 5th. Without that judicial decision from the federal district court in California, we were going to look at 10,000 kids a day nationally by March 5th whose status has been affected, who might have to go, who are just sitting there going, what do I do?
It's about 220 a day.
Okay. What are you telling DACA students right now about how they should deal with this? Let it roll off their backs? Just go about your business? Or start to prepare to get the heck out? Or somewhere in between?
I think it's a dual strategy, right? On the one hand, I mean, obviously the Trump administration is going to appeal this until it gets to the Supreme Court. So on the one hand, do not send in your application right now if you fail to meet the October 5th deadline, because we don't know what the process is. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Service still has to let us know that. So make sure you have your money and your application ready until for when USCIS decides something, right? But on the other hand, absolutely, every single person who is an undocumented immigrant or friends of or married to is right now making a contingency plan, right? And when you think of these DACA individuals,
and the contingency plan is like what?
Contingency plan is saving as much money as possible, because most likely one of your relatives is going to be deported and you're going to have to go meet them in a country that you don't even know sometimes, right? So it's literally
and it's just, this is so stupid.
It is.
I mean, the kids who came here. But here's the thing: even the most hard right-wing, even Trumpian, you know, always Trumpers versus the never Trumpers, just break down over this. And he keeps coughing up, you know, the solution of love. Yet he wants to tie this to border security or the wall. But then again, border security might mean not the 2,000-mile wall. It might mean, you know, some electronic gizmos, da-da-da-da-da. We're all over the map. Republicans and Democrats are kind of juxtaposing against each other.
And leaving it to the last minute.
By the way, I don't know the Democrats are behaving any better in this whole situation either.
Completely. I completely agree. That's what I'm saying. Who's the leader on the other side? Right? Who's the leader on the other side speaking to the American people and appealing to our sense of values and of a nation of immigrants? There is none, right? And also they're leaving this to the last minute, which really speaks to the dysfunction in Congress. We've known about this since October. Why is all of a sudden Representative Goodlatte coming out with an immigration bill the day after President Trump, the courts issue an injunction on DACA? It's a mess, right? But what we do know is that Trump has a campaign promise, regardless of how ridiculous it is, regardless of how many people and how many national security experts have told him that will not make us safer, that he wants to get done. And so if he can pick at these vulnerable populations that actually do pluck at the heartstrings of most, right? Maybe he's thinking he can bend their hand and get what he wants. But what he wants isn't good for us. People aren't for it.
But there may be some conciliation here where Democrats have got to say, we're going to give him what reflects his broad definition of a wall and just end this DACA conversation.
They're going to have to. But at the same time, Republicans keep moving the goalpost. And that's what's really frustrating about this. When President Obama tried to achieve comprehensive immigration reform, the landscape that he saw was that Republicans, every single time you said comprehensive immigration reform, would say border security first. So what did he do? He put more money and more funds on the border than ever before. Net migration from Mexico is 0. And still, when he went to Congress and tried to get something done, border security first. Worst case scenario, we get a presidential candidate who runs a campaign, an anti-Latino, anti-Mexican campaign, who right now has, you know, can do whatever he wants. And meanwhile, lives are in limbo.
All right. What happens here as the heat gets hotter? We'll talk about it. You know, it's so funny. Before Donald Trump actually announced he was running for the presidency, immigration, and I saw poll after poll after poll on this, immigration out of a top 10 list of most people's concerns was like 8, 9, and 10.
Well, and for a Latino,
8, 9, and 10.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
People watching TV are like, what are you talking? I'm telling you, the polling data was 8, 9, and 10. Jobs, the economy, taxes, health care, you know, all led the league. Now it's this thing that, and then the 7-Eleven thing, we got a headline on that, I'm sure. I don't know if this is a Latino-based controversy. This is an immigration-based controversy. Just feeds into those people thing. Anybody that's not a born American citizen, it just this tumult. And by the way, not that this investigation or raid shouldn't have occurred. When President Obama's administration did such. So this is not just Donald Trump. I'm sure he'll suggest it's the first ever 7-Eleven raid, but guess what? It's happened before.
What could be new, though?
It's the biggest one, though, I think. I think it's the biggest one, but whatever.
What could be new is if he actually holds employers accountable for hiring undocumented immigrants, right? So prior,
do you support that?
Usually, do I support
some penalty for employers hiring undocumented immigrants?
The system is so messed up that there has to be a fairness in how we treat people. Over 70% of our agriculture is done by undocumented immigrants. So if Donald Trump really wanted to go after the quote-unquote bad guys that hire undocumented immigrants, he would be raiding farms in California, which he's not doing. I don't think you answered my question, though. Do you support that, or do you think it's just too complicated to handle as as an isolated issue? I do think that employers shouldn't be hiring undocumented workers. But the problem is that we don't have workers here willing to take these jobs.
Got it. I mean, it's every simple question creates a complicated answer.
Yeah, on immigration.
I only got a minute here. Will we see Rhode Island officials reaching, 11 feet out on a 10-foot board to defy the federal government at any time here? Do you think we're going to get to that place where we have a tangible, visible between state and federal?
I mean, if he gets, if President Trump gets all the funding that he wants for interior enforcement, et cetera, there's going to be more. To this point, Rhode Island State Police has said that they won't cooperate with immigration. And fortunately, there hasn't been any cases of folks being deported yet. But anything is possible with this president, as you've seen.
All right. Welcome to Rhode Island.
Thank you.
Come often.
I will.
It's not like it's an issue that's going away. Huh?
I'm happy to come and talk about it.
Very nice. I'll tell you what's next tomorrow night. Next. All right, so the Paw Sox Stadium thing crawls through the Senate. Most likely will be passed by the Senate on Tuesday, but then the brick wall in the House needs to be addressed. Tomorrow we'll have the Director of Administration for the City of Pawtucket and one of the leaders arguing against the financing of the stadium by any taxpayer dollar. We'll see you then. Don't forget, tune in 3 o'clock tomorrow on WPRO on the radio. Good night.